Hey, this is the Between part 3, I think, part 3. And I want to begin by doing a little bit of recap as always. So let's just do a condition recap on the hunters, and a fair few of you have some conditions. Let's talk about Mr. Nelson, who has shaken, drained, and interestingly, the sons of another world. That came from a conversation with the very cryptic man in the sun mask. We, Green does not have any currently. Mr. Quinn has a sliced hand and intrigued by Mr. Taliford. Speaking of Mr. Taliford, we have marked by the lurker. So that's kind of where we stand with conditions. We had a lot of like interesting non-threat things happening last time, a couple of big ones. A vampire called Julius moved in and is living in his old room in Hargrave House, it would seem. And so that's an interesting thing that occurred. We have Mr. Nelson getting a nighttime visit from someone who we have not yet met, but we'll talk about more later. And we had Mr. Taliford having a little rendezvous with an entity called Mr. Bell that lives in Limehouse. And it seems like Mr. Bell has a connection to Julius, which means Julius probably has a connection to Limehouse as well, which is kind of interesting. Let's talk about the actual threats, though. So we currently have 2 active threats, the St. James's Street Ghost and the Limehouse Lurker. We have 1 question remaining on the St. James's Street Ghost, which is how can we get this ghost to pass on to the next world? It is complexity 6, and it allows you to resolve the threat by performing a quieting ritual. You currently have 3 clues available for that. The mirror cracked in a spiral pattern, actually several glass things cracked in that pattern, the sensation of fingers tightening around your neck, and a stack of old love letters from an older time. So that's sort of what's going on with that one. And then the Limehouse Lurker, as a reminder, we have people being murdered and their blood drained in Limehouse. Jenny Johnston, who runs an opium den in Limehouse, is keeping the bodies in her basement because she doesn't want any trouble for the sort of like small but growing Chinese immigrant community in Limehouse. And so she has asked Hargrave House to take a look at this. Now we have some evidence. We're certain it's a vampire because we have experience with vampires. There's one literally living in the house right now. But the thing about this vampire is it's in the body of a child. But the first question you have to answer is the vampire actually a child, or is it just a very old vampire in a child's body? Depending on the age of the vampire, it has to be dealt with differently. And so that's the first question. You actually have, it's complexity 4, and you actually have a good amount of clues for this one already. We have drawings of a boat on waters with 2 suns in the sky. We have things in 3s going missing, or like the 3rd thing in a set of 3 going missing. Ms. Bell, who's one of the victims, was known to be cruel to children. And then we have this faded fresco of a Roman phalanx, which is interesting. We have a couple of really interesting NPCs here, or side characters, Jenny Johnston, of course, but also the man in the sun mask, this cryptic fellow who has variously claimed to be a diplomat, a member of the royal family, and other things, disguising his true identity and hanging out at the opium den. Whether he's actually connected to the Limehouse Lurker or not is probably beside the point, but in any case, an interesting character nonetheless. So that is sort of where the threats stand currently. As far as the mastermind goes, you have 2 mastermind clues right now. Mastermind clues are mostly just a timer for like different things that happen with the mastermind. So with all that said, anything else that we need to be reminded of from last time? And did anyone take an advance as well?
So on the mastermind clues, I think I picked up one right at the end of the last session with like everyone staring at me as I was leaving Mr. Bell's.
Oh, that's right. We need to write that down. That's a 3rd clue, huh? It was, you walked into a sort of like strange masquerade of people wearing these sort of blue masks. It's almost like they were waiting on you and they were staring at you as you left, which was interesting. We're going to call it the Sapphire Blue Masquerade. Thank you for that. I just didn't write it down. And 3 Mastermind Clues is actually a threshold thing. So just out of character, the stuff with the Mastermind is going to get going a little bit more. And anything else we need to be reminded of?
You asked if anyone took an advancement. I did last time.
What'd you take?
I added Unquenchable Thirst as an additional move to my playbook.
Awesome. So that's the one that gives you lots of power in social situations, plus clears physical conditions that would affect your beauty. So that's good. Fantastic. Anything else? I'll just note here that we don't have Adrian for the first few minutes, so we'll check in with Green later. But
so I also took an advance and added a beacon in the dark to my moves.
Good. Yeah, that one's that's very fun. You get to walk around the streets at night by yourself and call things to you. That's the way to do it. Fantastic. Okay, so it's the day phase. I think this day phase is taking place actually several days after the events of the last night phase. So Julius has been there for a few days. The bodies are rotting a little bit in the basement of Jamie Johnston's. And importantly, you've had some time to look into this, into Mr. Nelson's collar. And that is your new threat. This threat is called the Pinkerton. So this, of course, is a special threat that's connected to the American playbook. And here we go. A man named Winslow Taggart called on Hargrave House looking for Mr. Nelson, but Mr. Nelson was out at the time. And so Mr. Taggart said he would try again later. He never did. But a cursory inquiry reveals that Mr. Taggart works for the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, and he has been hired to bring Mr. Nelson back to the United States. He's staying at the Langham Hotel in the West End. That's important. Mr. Nelson, you know Winslow Taggart by reputation. He's ruthless and corrupt. What criminal scheme was he known to be involved in back home?
A good question. I think he was involved in some railway extortion. Like he ran some sort of scheme forcing, like it's sort of ironic because rail lines, have to pass through where the rail goes. But I think that he extorted the railways going through, I've already, I think, mentioned like Utah, so like through Utah. And that, everybody paid money to Taggart at one point or another there.
Fantastic. Taggart wouldn't come all the way to London just to collect a bounty. If you can figure out what shady angle he's working on here in London, you might be able to confront him with it and pressure him to give up the bounty rather than risk being exposed to his employers. And so this is our question. What unsavory scheme is Taggart pursuing while he's in London? And it opens up the opportunity to resolve the threat by confronting Taggart with his shady dealings and convincing him to leave London. And so that is your question. It's a complexity 4, fairly simple as far as threats go. And so that's where we're at with that. So the day phase, of course, belongs to you. You can do anything you wish. I will tell you a little bit of extra news about one of your active threats. This is the St. James's Street Ghost. The Beals, this is probably Harold's scheme. The Beals have decided to do a public exorcism at the house. They are going to bring in priests and other people to try to drive the ghost out of their house. And furthermore, they are going to open it up to the public so people can come watch this exorcism at 18 St. James's Street. It's in the paper, okay? So now I just will throw out as a little aside here, Mr. Taliford, this would be a great opportunity to use a thinning of the veil because there's probably some shit's going to go down because of this, and you can at least find out what it is, right? You can use that whenever you want, though, to ask those questions. But I figured since we haven't seen that movie yet, it might be nice to kind of note that. But yeah, this situation could get more complicated because the Beals are taking it upon themselves and furthermore monetizing it. So that's what's going on with 18 St. James's Street presently. So of course, in the day phase, you can do whatever you want. I will tell you that the planned exorcism is tonight, so be aware of that, according to the paper at least. And I'll just go around the table and find out what everyone's interested in doing. Mr. Nelson, what do you think?
I think that I'd like to try to strike up a conversation with Mr. Quinn, who I think seems the most connected to, like, Taliford seems most connected to like dark and sort of magical underworld dealings, but I feel like Mr. Quinn knows a fair number of contacts in more mundane ones. And I think he's going to make the assumption that probably our Pinkerton friend is involved in one of those. At least that's his current assumption. So I think he wants to try to talk to Mr. Quinn about who he should go to in order to try to figure out why he's here.
Mr. Quinn, are you okay with that scene? And then after that, do you have any other ideas for what you want to do?
Yeah, I'm good with that scene. And I'm so torn between doing more Beale stuff, but now I feel like this vampire has like piqued my interest, and maybe there are some connections there to what is happening vampire wise. So I would like to have a scene with Julius trying to get some information out of him. I think
Julius in the day should be interesting. Good. That sounds good to me. Mr. Taliford.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk to Julius because I have some Mr. Bell themed questions to ask of him. So
very good. Okay, are you all going to like be tag teaming Julius at this point, or separate scenes? Do you want?
It doesn't really matter to me.
If we're,
I'm happy to just do it over breakfast or something. You know, if we want to just have a scene where we happen to be together.
That works. I was going to say it would make sense that I would want to go with Mr. Taliford because I also have the intrigued by Mr. Taliford condition, so I can lean into that.
I will tell you, you've had a few days to get used to Julius's routine. He does not come out of his room in the day. In the day, he sleeps, and at night, he goes out and he comes back really, really early in the morning and goes to bed. You don't actually see him very much. He occasionally drops in to like the salon or wherever you're having evening drinks, and we'll sort of see what you're up to, kind of chat about the old days in Hargrave House, but then he kind of goes and does his own thing. And so I think I want to start with that scene with Mr. Nelson and Quinn, though. I think that'd be a good first scene. So let's Mr. Nelson, frame that up. Where's the scene happening? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm imagining this is reasonably early in the morning, maybe like between 9 and 10 a.m. So I wanted to ask, where do you think Mr. Quinn is in any morning preparation rituals at that point, Alicia?
I think that I am a late riser, and I spend a lot of time in my bedroom just like prepping and fussing and having Green get me ready. So that's probably what I'm doing. Awake, but like not prepared to face the day.
Then I think probably Hank goes to your door and gives a light rap, and then just sort of waits, sitting back on his heels, twiddling his fingers, seeing if you're there.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, Adrian's not here, but I would imagine that I would like have Green let you in. No one else is going to be knocking on my door besides someone from the house at this point in time. Then I welcome you in. I have like a little seating area, I feel like, that's like these like plush velvet chairs. And I invite you to sit in one. And I am wearing a like very ruffly like dressing gown situation. It's gold. I think it's satin. And my hair is already done, but I'm not dressed.
I think Hank goes to one of the seats you motioned to and like looks at just how soft it is, and I think just takes off one of like the throw pillows or whatever that's on it, just to make it a little bit less that way, and then sort of gingerly sits down. Well, so Mr. Quinn, I'm terribly sorry to bother you so early in the day. I know that you have things that you attend to this time. I was hoping to pick your brain a little bit about a thorn that has appeared in my side. I think you're aware of the gentleman who visited the Hargrave house the other night.
Yes, very mysterious and very rude, I feel like. Never said he would return and did not return. That's not good manners.
Yes, terribly uncouth of him. Although from his what's the word I'm looking for? It's the what you know of them. The reputation. There's the word. From his reputation, I don't imagine he's one to particularly care about trivialities like that. He's certainly here for me, I suppose. But if it were just me, he wouldn't. Well, if it were just me, he would have come back. I think we can both acknowledge that. So I think that he's here for some other kind of business, and he's a man who prefers the kind I think that you're rather well acquainted with, Mr. Quinn.
I mean, do you think that he runs in high society circles?
I think he involves himself in the circles which prey upon them.
Interesting. And so you want me to help find him?
Well, I would very much rather not go back to America, if I'm being honest with you. There's lots of parts of my life I'd like to leave behind there. And if we can uncover whatever dark dealings our friendly neighborhood Pinkerton has gotten up to, then I believe we might be able to pressure him to let a minor case such as myself slide.
Yes, well, I don't blame you for not wanting to go back to the United States. They're very gauche over there. Truly horrific.
Oh, they're the worst, certainly.
Yes, all right. One moment. And I'm gonna like pull out my little book that I'd like previously like referred to. And I guess, I don't know, like I'll look for a name of someone I might know who might know someone.
I think the information move is probably appropriate here. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Oh, dice. What am I rolling with?
I think it'd probably just be reason, I guess.
10.
Nice. Give you a clue real quick. You are actually putting two and two together. I think you were at a dinner last night, Mr. Quinn, and during that dinner, there was stories of an American inquiring about rare coins at the city's auction houses. And putting two and two together, maybe this is your Mr. Taggart.
All right.
But I shall
Obviously,
note that for you.
Relay this information. If you would like, I'm sure that I could arrange a place where we might meet him, a social gathering he might be at.
Oh, I suppose if I must show my face, I can, although I imagine that I will be quite the feature at one of your soirees that you attend.
Oh, well, I can lend you something if you would like.
Oh, I don't know if that will be quite necessary. I'm sure I'll manage.
Okay. Well, if you change your mind, just tell Green. I'm sure that we can find something to fit this.
Well, my parents tried before you and they didn't manage to find anything, but I imagine I can scrounge up something that will seem presentable. Thank you for your help, Mr. Quinn. I look forward to working with you later on this.
Let's go over to
Likewise.
Mr. Taliford. Mr. Taliford, I think I just want to start with you in Julius's room, and then Mr. Quinn can join later. But so what is this? The door is shut. Julius is presumably sleeping. What do you do?
I'll just knock.
And you hear from deeper in the room, I am currently trying to get some rest.
Is the door open?
It is.
All right, I'll just go in and be like, well, I don't want to bother you, but I've been trying to catch you for days, and it is a matter of some importance.
You go inside the room, and let's do a paint the scene here. How has Julius changed the decor of the room to accommodate the particular needs of his species?
So there's like sheets hung over, there's like big mirrors on the walls typically, and there's sheets hung over all the mirrors.
It's an everyone question.
Yeah, they always are. Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's not like one, not two, but there's like 3, maybe even 4 layers to the drapes, just so that like something doesn't accidentally knock them open.
I think that there are several decanters filled with like blood, frankly. Different kinds, though.
I love it. It's very dark in there, Mr. Taliford. And there is a 4-poster bed with the curtains closed around it, and he's probably laying in there, and he will respond to you. He'll say, Mr. Taliford, I am absolutely thrilled to hear what is so pressing that this couldn't wait a few hours. Please do tell.
So I think like pick up one of the decanters and kind of sniff it, put it back down. Well, a few nights ago, I spent some time with someone who I believe is a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Bell from Limehouse.
Do not speak that name to me, Mr. Taliford. And yes, I'm aware of it.
Well, I mean, I'm just here because I find myself in a bit of an awkward situation. You seem to fit in here and people seem to like you being here. But on the other hand, Mr. Bell could almost certainly destroy me in an instant. And he seems very upset that you're here.
Oh, is this going to turn into one of those, relationship triangles? Is that what's happening here, Mr. Taliford? You can have him. I'm not here to fight you on this. And furthermore, perhaps you will even be a distraction for him so that he will stop hectoring me.
Well, I don't think you're quite understanding the situation. I think he wants me to bring you back.
Ah, there we are. So what are you going to do?
Well, I just wanted to get a feel for the situation. I mean, I don't want to physically drag you back to his house, but
it's not so much a physical thing, Mr. Taliford. There is no way of physically forcing me to go back there. No, I managed to give him the slip in a sort of, let's say, unconventional manner. you know something about ritual magic. It's like that.
I see. And so, I mean, how do you expect to resolve the situation though? Because clearly he's not done with you.
Yes, well, in fact, it's a rather complicated situation because my being bound to Mr. Bell in the first place was something that it was a deal that my companions in Hargrave House made a number of years ago. And by you sheltering me here, it's almost like Hargrave House is going against the deal. It's everyone's problem, really. I don't have any thoughts on the matter except to say that, well, you just have to convince him that I'm no longer worth his time.
I mean, not to be too forward about the situation, but it seems like an easier job to evict you from Hargrave House than to change the mind of a demon prince.
Yes, probably. Well, if that's going to be what happens, then at least give me a little bit of warning.
Okay, well,
30 days notice, I think, is typical, right?
Well, I do believe in tenants' rights, so I'll discuss it with the others. And, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but it seems like if it's a choice between that or, coming into conflict with Mr. Bell, seems like there's an obvious choice.
Before you go, and here I think maybe Mr. Quinn, you might be showing up at this point. Before you go, how are things going with the little wee vamp in Limehouse? I know you've been looking into that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've gotten that far, honestly. I'm a bit disappointed in our progress.
Well, probably helpful to have a vampire on hand for such matters.
Look, I'm not saying you're without your uses. I'm just saying there's a situation. But if you'd like to, show how helpful you can be, I certainly would turn away your offer of help.
I can smell Mr. Quinn. Mr. Quinn, that injury you sustained on your hand several days ago is currently weeping.
I'm gonna push into the room and I'll say, oh, I appreciate the concern, but it won't be an issue for much longer.
Yes, well, since I have so many visitors this morning, I feel I should probably have set something out for you all. I suppose you could join me for a glass if you want. I'm always happy to share the previous night's harvest.
I'm going to side-eye Mr. Taliford and then graciously accept whatever he's offering.
He pulls open the curtains, he slides out of bed, he's completely naked, and he walks over to the little dresser, his pale body sort of luminous in the dim light coming in from the hall. And you can see him pouring you a tumbler of blood. And he says, now, these decanters keep it fresh, but it will coagulate before you know it. So drink it right down. He goes and hands you a glass, Mr. Quinn.
Yeah,
I'll tell you a little bit about the victim as you drink. Although victim is the wrong way of putting it. I actually have a whole network of people who happily supply me with blood whenever I need it. This is all being done very ethically. Nothing Hargrave House has to concern itself with.
I'm going to look him right in the eye and say, I too have a network of people who service my needs. And then I'll just down the drink of blood.
He says, that particular bit belongs to Mr. Billingsley, degenerate gambler. I help cover his bets from time to time. In exchange, he gives me a little bit of a fresh supply. I think you'll find that his vintage has the taste of desperation, but with hope mixed in, which really, really makes it all very, very satisfying quaff. What do you think?
I will put the glass down and wipe my gloved hands and say, it's just not rich enough for my tastes.
Well, you probably haven't quite developed your palate sufficiently. That's okay. Maybe we'll get there someday. If there's nothing else, I'm going back to bed.
Well, actually, since you did bring it up, perhaps you might have any insight onto our little vampire problem.
I think you drinking the blood is enough to get the roll. Do the information with presence. No, sensitivity.
Oh, presence is so much better. That is an 8.
He says, well, he's kind of getting back in bed as he says this. He says, well, I haven't met the little scamp myself personally, but let's just say there have been some strange developments around Limehouse ever since these murders started happening. For instance, people have been reporting that their copies of the Bible, the Holy Bible, have all been defaced. Each reports that the story of Noah has been ripped from the book. Isn't that interesting?
Honestly, it seems a little on the nose to me.
Well, I'm not really in the investigation game anymore. I'm in the crashing at your place for free game. Thank you all for this wonderful visit. And he closes the curtains. But that's your clue. Bibles have the story of Noah torn from their pages. Green, you're back. Green, what are you up to this morning?
Well, the one thing that Green, I think, is set upon during this day is to gather everyone together to finally have them look at these watches. So I think the point is that Green is probably like, everybody's always so busy, they all have their life, they have their things to do. So sometimes Green just has to pull them back, together to do one of these kind of investigation things that everybody always forgets about because they have other more important things to do. So he has been trying to get them to look at these watches, when they go out, kind of shows them to, like, they all push him off, like, yeah, next, tomorrow and so on. So today he's kind of set upon catching them all before they leave.
All right, good.
Exactly.
So everyone is gathered. What room are we gathered in, Green?
Probably like a salon or something, or a kitchen or somewhere where there's a table where all these watches are put out. Yeah.
Very good. So give us the scene. What are you doing? Well, we assume you're conducting the investigation, Green. So what does this look like?
So I think Green is kind of showing off these different watches and telling what he has found out, what they have found out until now, that this is a watch that someone says has stopped at this particular time, and they swear that there was some ghostly event that stopped the watch. And this is another one that I got from some older, so the shop of this old man right around the corner. And we should, if we want to know more, then we should bring them to St. James Street to kind of use them as kind of detectors or something. So I assure you all, this is the best way to do this. Is I brought all of these watches, and you should just all take one. And if you ever encounter any spirit or any ghost, hopefully it will stop, and it will you will be able to know that something is happening, or at least that is the theory that I put together. Please take one with you before you leave today.
I will extend my wrist and expect Green to pick out the best watch that matches my outfit for the day.
Of course, one of the really beautiful ones that like a leather strap and this. I think Green picks it up and polishes it with a cloth before they put it on Mr. Quinn's hand or wrist, and very slowly kind of close it and kind of softly stroking kind of the hand when it looks good, doesn't it? It fits perfectly.
Yes, you do have excellent taste. Strange that you could find such a specific watch that still services my needs, but that's why you're in my employ. No one does it better than you, Green.
I want to check in with Mr. Quinn really briefly, because I do owe you a complication on that last clue. And I think it's because, and I think what I'm going to do is make you scar the reflection, mostly from drinking the blood. I'm curious, how does the statue change?
So the last time I scarred it, we had, which was also related to blood, all the like black veins come out. And so now I think that there's like a permanent, just like little dribble, like a black stain dribble coming out of the mouth of my statue.
Oh, and your cult, they like clean it and it keeps coming back. Is that kind of thing? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's go back to this scene with the watches. So the plan, Green, is to get everyone to like carry one of these timepieces around and then see kind of what happens.
I think so, yes. This is because I think what we established is that somehow, I think, if I remember correctly, watches stop when there's ghostly activity. So that's kind of, it's like a kind of a detector. So if they were to go back to St. James's Street, if that's where they would find themselves during the night or something, then it might help them during these investigations. And I think the rest of the watches, I think Green will be messing with and trying to figure something out with them later when the sun is going down.
I'll give you the information move for now, because you might be able to learn something just by sort of handling the timepieces and sort of talking about them and passing them out, and presumably like setting them, right? Because you have to manually set them, right? Go ahead and roll with reason for now.
With reason, that's a 6.
I think as this scene is wrapping, having given everyone the timepieces, I think at a certain point you are at the top of a set of stairs, Green, and as you sort of like slip the timepiece into your pocket, the one that you've kept for yourself, you get this very, very like overwhelming sense of vertigo at the top of the stairs, and you actually fall down the stairs, taking quite a hard tumble. And I think you land really hard. And you break your wrist. Unless you want to mark the Janus mask.
I think I'm gonna mark a mask. Yes, I'm gonna mark the mask of the past.
Instead, you get this sense of vertigo at the top of the stairs, and you have the feeling of someone pushing you down the stairs. And you don't know exactly what that means, but it's a clue, the feeling of being pushed down the stairs. And I'm actually going to give you a condition from it. The condition is going to be I'm going to give you fear of falling as a condition, but you get your clue.
I think Green, they catch themselves kind of on the top of the stairs and hold on like to the wall and look down the stairs, kind of these steep stairs, and think like this could have ended badly.
Yeah. Mr. Nelson, what are you up to after the meeting?
Yeah, I think that he would try to go over to the area around where around the opium den where the bodies are being kept. I think he would just want to look around, and this is sort of broad, but he'd want to like look around for signs of a vampire.
Let me remind you where the 3 bodies were found.
Yeah.
So you've pretty well searched the opium den at this point. That was where one of the bodies, Soft Jimmy, the sex worker, was found. But also we have Charla Bell, who we know was cruel to children. Not surprising because she worked at the workhouse, and the workhouse is where she was found, or at least behind the workhouse in an alley. And then we have the Chinese sailor, Xiao Donghai, who was found at a pub near the docks. That pub is called the Dog and Whistle. So you have some specific places to go look if you want.
Right. Since we already have something about Charla Bell being cruel to children, I kind of want to go and check out the school and look for any indicators there.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's talk about the workhouse. So it's called the Limehouse School, but it's not actually a school. It's a place where they just put poor people to like punish them and make them work, right? For the crime of being poor. And this particular workhouse has filthy children all over the place. You see a frustrated mistress sort of storming away from a group of girls failing to learn to sew. Quite a strong smell of unwashed bodies. A paint the scene question for everyone. Workhouses like this are where poor children are sent to be managed until they're old enough to be turned out. What signs of deprivation do we see?
I don't think a single child here is wearing socks or shoes of any kind.
I think that most of the children, if they aren't actually like emaciated, are verging on it. Like it's obviously that they're not being fed correctly.
I think as soon as you walk into like the area, you have kids just trying to like pick your pocket constantly.
I think in the background we see like 3 kids fighting over like a small hat that is even too small for them.
So yeah, this is kind of the scene that's going on, Mr. Nelson. You can just walk right in. Nobody will stop you from roaming around. What do you do?
I think I want to find a teacher, air quotes, one of the managers of these kids, and I want to ask them if they keep any sort of register of the kids who are kept here, and I want to see if any of them have gone missing.
So I did describe one of the school mistresses kind of storming away from a group of girls, and she sees you and she says, "Oh, hello, can I help you?"
Yeah, Hank will tip his hat to her. Yes. I just wanted to inquire about, well, the everything you have going on here. I've been looking into the most unfortunate death of a colleague of yours, a Mrs. Bell, was it?
Oh, a death. We knew that Ms. Bell had, she's sort of left her post a week or so ago, but we didn't know she was She was dead.
Well, I'm afraid she's left her post in a most permanent way.
She's like, oh my, are you a family friend? I didn't know she had relations in America or friends from there.
I'm what you might call a private investigator hired to look into this case.
Oh, well, do you have some sort of credentials?
Sure. I'm gonna reach in to my coat. I'm just gonna pull out my U.S. passport and just sort of like flash the picture.
She says, well, how can I help you?
Well, now I gather that Miss Bell was not particularly liked here. Is that something that you would agree with?
She's sort of like, she keeps kind of like looking in your coat pocket where you put your passport, where you pulled it from. I think I want the information to move with composure, since you're essentially lying to her.
And ooh, that's not great. How's my composure? Also not great. That's a 5.
You hear across the way, coming in through another entrance to, like, I think you're like in a courtyard where a bunch of the kids and stuff are. You hear a man say, "Oh, I thought I saw him come this way. There he is." It's the Pinkerton, Winslow Taggart, short, squat, stout man wearing a how does he look? He's got a mean, square-jawed face, charcoal 3-piece suit with a red bow tie, and a billycock hat, which is like kind of a bowler. And he just goes past the person who he was talking to when he sees you and is coming right towards you. We'll cut away for a moment. Mr. Taliford, what are you doing in the afternoon?
So I think I'm going to go to the pub, the Dog and Whistle, because that's one of the few places that we know nothing about. So
yeah, let's talk about the Dog and Whistle. It's a pub with dull brass fixtures. There's a stack of tin mugs on the bar and a very prominent painting of a dog, but no apparent whistle. Paint a scene. This pub caters to sailors and folk who work at the canal, just walking in, even in the daytime when it's not as busy. How do you know this?
I think there's a big ship's wheel like mounted on the wall above the bar.
Any other thoughts?
Can you repeat the prompt? Sorry, my concussion brain
That's okay.
spazzed.
How do we know that the bar caters to sailors and people who work at the docks?
I think that the bar's hours pretty much mirror the end of shifts for the different dock workers.
I think that there's a place where the dock workers coming straight here from their shifts can like leave their tools. Like it's a safe spot, like tool deposit, dock tool deposit.
I think all of the drinks have like these kind of sailor names or, nautical names.
Interesting. So when you walk in, it's fairly quiet, Mr. Taliford. You see just the barman, he's got kind of a sweaty forehead and hairy arms. He's wearing a black apron and he's sort of wiping down the bar. Seems like he just spends a lot of his time wiping down the bar. And there's an old woman sitting in the corner. She's got a wild nest of gray hair and she's sort of wrapped in a blanket and she's sort of like nursing a drink from a tin mug. Otherwise pretty empty. What do you do?
I'm going to try to order wine. I'm not sure if that's a thing that's possible.
he says, he looks at you like up and down because you look a little unusual, especially with your eye patch. And he'll say, wine? Yeah, I may have something. Most of our customers go in for different types of drinks, of course. Yeah. What kind of wine do you want?
Oh, well, and like look behind the bar and see like a little menu and like, maybe I'll just have one of these keel halls.
He says, a keel hall, right? I can do that. And he's sort of like, it's a drink made with spirits, and he's sort of making that for you. And he says, don't take this the wrong way, friend, but you don't really seem like the type that frequents the Dog and Whistle.
Well, I'm not. It is my first time here. I suppose I might stick out a bit, but I'm a man who cares about the community, and I heard there were some issues over here with a certain sailor, Zhao Donghai.
Name doesn't ring a bell, but we do get a lot of Chinese sailors in here. That's certainly true. And wherever sailors go, trouble always follows. Nothing surprising about that.
That's an interesting take on sailors from someone who runs a sailor-themed bar.
Well, you've never had to put out sailors for being too rowdy or peel them off of your floor when they've passed out. They can be a bit of a mess.
I see. So I'm going to gesture to the woman in the back and like, so what's her story?
Oh, that's Elma. She's a regular. Go over there, check in on her. She'll complain about the cold. She's always too cold.
I see. All right. Well, thanks for the info. I'll pay him and head over, and I'll be like, oh man, is it me or is this place freezing?
She looks up and she says, it's always so damn cold in here. I keep begging Rory to fix the seals on these windows, but apparently he can't find the coin to get it done. And she pulls the blanket closer around her body.
Well, as much as they charge for these keel halls.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. We'll come back into that scene. So, Mr. Quinn, what are you doing this afternoon?
I guess I will be seeing if I can make preparations for this thing I told Mr. Nelson that I would do.
You're going to be hosting Mr. Taggart? Is that what I understand to be the case?
Well, I said I was going to search out a social event, but I could host a social event. That's fine.
Interesting. So, okay. So Mr. Taggart is staying at the Langham Hotel. So if you just need to get an invitation to Mr. Taggart or something, that's where you can find him typically. Although at the moment he's occupied with Mr. Nelson. Yeah. So what's your approach here? What are you going to do?
I think I'm going to host a dinner party. I'm going to prep a dinner party for tonight. So my plan would be to reach out to the people last night who a few of the people who were discussing the coins and things like that, and then also add Mr. Taggart. So yeah, I'm just going about to deliver invitations, I guess.
Let's retcon a little bit and say that Mr. Nelson, you know what Mr. Quinn's plans are. So you can know that as you're having this conversation with Mr. Taggart, I think. Okay, good. We can just say that you're doing that for now, Mr. Quinn. That shouldn't be too much trouble. And Green, what are you doing this afternoon?
Green is going out to visit a tailor. Should we have? Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay, we can have that scene. So you're at the tailor's. Then what?
So we see Green walking through the street and kind of stopping in front of the window of a tailor, and it's a man's tailor shop, and there are these beautiful suits in the front window. They go in, and the tailor inside kind of nods knowingly to Green, and Green goes to like a back room, and they settle down and they sit in front of this suit on like a tailor's puppet, and they start working on it. And it looks exactly like one of these suits that Mr. Quinn is wearing. So we see them kind of tailoring this and working on this suit, and see them thinking back to a time when they were still in Paris, and they were doing this fashion show where they were presenting all this rather extravagant man's fashion, kind of sitting in the audience and people clapping, and the models kind of walking, and that definitely was one of the moments of this earlier life of Green.
Oh, is this your Mask of the Past?
Yes.
Interesting. So you used to be a fashion designer. Interesting. Intriguing. Mr. Nelson, Mr. Taggart, he says, Mr. Nelson, I've been trying to track you down the last few days.
Oh, Mr. Taggart, of course. Please excuse me for a moment. I say to the woman I was speaking with, and I'm gonna like run over to Taggart like I was expecting him, and like hold out my hand for like a firm handshake, and like sort of like wink.
Wink at him.
Yes.
He confusedly takes your hand and says, Mr. Nelson, you and I have to have a conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I like, while I'm shaking his hand, I sort of like lean down to him because he's a bit shorter than me, and say, Mr. Taggart, if you just give me a moment here, I will happily, no fuss, no suss, answer some of your questions right after this. I promise you.
And he kind of says, well, be quick about it.
Absolutely. Just, you can wait right here and I'll be right back with you.
Okay, then what?
And then he breaks away from Taggart and says, oh, excellent findings, Mr. Taggart. I love what you're working with. And he goes back to the woman and says, so I'm sorry, I didn't even catch your name. What may I call you?
She says, this is all very strange and unusual, and I have a lot of work to get to. So if there's nothing else, sir.
Just one question. Have any of the children here, have they been acting strangely, or have any of them gone missing in all of this? I'm trying to tie together a few threads.
Children at this school go missing all the time. They don't actually like being here very much, despite the fact that we are doing our very, very best to teach them skills that will help them better integrate into society. And, well, so no, there's nothing unusual about that, about children running off and getting up to who knows what.
Do you keep track of who disappears, who leaves?
I'm sure someone does. Perhaps you should go speak to the headmaster.
Perhaps I should. I'll let you get back to your business.
Indeed. The headmaster is a man named Lawrence Chesterfield. You could theoretically go talk to him if you wanted to.
Okay.
And Mr. Taggart says, are you quite done, Mr. Nelson?
It seems that way. What can I do for you, Taggart?
Mr. Nelson, your parents have employed me to come all the way across the Atlantic to bring you back to the United States of America, and I hope you're going to go with me willingly and happily.
Employed you? Someone of your most excellent stand. I think I'm hardly a triviality in your life.
Please, Mr. Nelson, I don't need whatever game you think you're playing, whatever you think you're doing. I mean, look at this getup. I mean, my goodness, you're not really fooling anyone.
I rather like how I dressed myself today.
So, I'm ready to charter us, or I'm ready to get us some tickets on a boat back across the Atlantic. You just name the time and place, hopefully within the next day or two, and we're off.
Are you offering to to pay for my fare across the ocean? That's so sweet of you, Mr. Taggart.
I will, of course, be submitting an invoice to your parents for your fare back across the ocean. My job is to make sure you get on the boat.
Either way, it's such a kind gesture. If you're going to be so good to me while you're here, I must extend a similar invitation to you. Why don't you join us at the Hargrave House for dinner tonight? I heard you stopped in the other day.
He kind of gives you a look. Says, "So then you are going to come with me?"
Oh, sure. Of course. I mean, if my parents sent you, your esteemed self, all the way over here, how could I possibly refuse?
Oh, enough. Fine. I'll go to your little dinner.
All right. Well, excellent. I think dinner tonight's going to be around 7 or 8. Wear something nice. Mr. Quinn will get upset if you don't.
All right, then. I'll see you tonight, then.
Oh, excellent. You have a lovely afternoon.
And like some kids are like, asking him for money as he leaves. And he just like yells at him, like, "Get the hell out of here, out of my way." And he kind of just keeps going. So let's take a quick 5-minute break. We'll come back and figure out what's going next. I think before we end the day phase, I want to find out if anyone's interested in doing anything else. And if not, we will go to the dusk phase. So let's start with, and also pick up with anybody who we may have left in the middle of a scene. And Mr. Talford, where did we leave you last time?
So I was mid-convo with the grumpy old lady in the bar.
Okay, we'll pick that up. And then Mr. Green, anything you want to do after you're done with the tailors?
I think waiting. I think I'm waiting until Mr. Nelson comes home to give him back a bottle.
Very good. We can have that scene before the dusk phase. Mr. Nelson, anything you're going to do after your conversation with Mr. Taggart?
I wouldn't mind working in a conversation with the headmaster, but if you don't think there's enough time in the day, then...
No, we got time. We can do it.
Okay.
Mr. Quinn, anything you want to do after you're done making your party preparations?
No, I think it's probably fine. I'm all party focused now, so there's lots of other stuff going on.
Sounds good. I do want to pick up with you, Mr. Quinn. I think you are out selecting something at the market for the party, right? When you will hear someone call to you on the street, "Mr. Quinn." You'll turn and you'll see a woman, an older woman, wearing a sapphire blue dress and a sapphire gem on her neck. She'll come up to you. She's still quite striking, despite her age. And she'll say, "Yes, I thought that was you. You cut quite a figure, very hard to miss."
I'm going to say, "Oh, are you the woman in blue that my employee keeps telling me about? He's smitten by you. They're smitten by you."
Ah, yes, a few nights ago, I did have a chance to speak to your manservant. I was wondering, actually, if you would be willing to give me a little bit of your time.
My time doesn't come cheap, but I'm sure we can work something out.
Oh, she looks and sees that you have some parcels under your arms, maybe bread or something. She says, "Oh, are you having a little get together?"
Yes, a dinner party for just some friends of mine.
Oh, I actually don't have anything going on tonight. I would hate to invite myself to your little dinner party, but I am a pretty fantastic conversationalist.
I'm just gonna look at her and smile and think, and say, I think you very much would like to invite yourself. And I quite enjoy the audacity of that. So certainly. It will be interesting.
Splendid, splendid. My name is Theodora, by the way, Theodora Brathwaite.
It's lovely to make your acquaintance.
So should I stop by Hargrave House? She knows Hargrave House at 7?
7:30, please.
All right, good. And then maybe later we'll be able to talk about other employment opportunities.
Yes, well, we'll see how the evening goes.
Good. Mr. Taliford, Elma Thorpe, complaining about the cold. What do you say? What do you do?
So I think I'm just gonna say, well, you look like someone who, sees things and knows what's going on around here. So I was looking for some information.
I do see things. I do know what's going on around here, but no one ever asks me for my opinion. No one ever asks the opinion of an old lady. You won't be young forever, and you'll discover that no one ever wants to know anything from people like us, from the old.
Well, ma'am, I respect anything that you might have to say. I would definitely appreciate it. And I'm going to tell her the name of the guy I'm asking about, Zhao Donghao.
Zhao Donghai.
Zhao Donghai.
Make the information move with presence.
All right. That is a 13.
Wow, that's good. She says, that name actually does sound a bit familiar to me. I've heard some stories that sailor went missing. Too bad. He was a lovely chap. He actually bought me a drink when he was here. They get really, 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 really spendy with their money when they've had a few, when they pull into port, Everyone's their friend. Everything's a party. She says, so you say the sailor's gone missing?
Well, I'm not supposed to tell anybody this, but I'm afraid he's dead.
Well, these are dark times we live in. Dark, dark times. I'm sorry to hear it. Was he your special companion?
No, but he was one of my flock.
Well, I wish I could help you. I don't really know what I might be able to, what I could say, what sorts of things you might find. Well, okay, all right. And give me just a moment. She says, I do remember a funny thing. He was a little beside himself because he had just, it's the last night that I remember seeing him. He came in and he was beside himself because he had bought a bunch of milk sweets and was passing them out to some of the urchins that crawl around here. And there was one particular youth who got rather offended when he was offered the candy, knocked it out of his hand. He was really, really, really upset about that. Said he's never going to do another nice thing for anyone ever again. I said, of course, well, who could tell what these children are like and what they want? I said, personally, I think the city should round them up.
Oh, couldn't agree more. Children are terrible. This generation, let me tell you.
But that's your clue. Xiaodong Hai tried to give candy to a kid that got offended and knocked it out of his hand. We should put that in the notes real quick. You got a 13 too. Let's read the move real quick. Oh, you also find a mastermind clue. Well, there we go. And let me take a look at those real quick. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is good. I mentioned there's a portrait of dog, no whistle, right? There are a few paintings hanging up. Weirdly, there's a painting of, well, it's not weird, but you just notice it. There's a painting of a young woman. She is wearing like a kind of like a dark blue sort of like jacket, like a sailor might wear, or the captain of a boat might wear, and a saber, and her leg is kind of up on something. She's kind of doing a sort of like, kind of pose. And
Captain Morgan.
Yeah, it's very similar. Yeah, like kind of a Captain Morgan kind of pose. And you'll notice a blue jewel on her neck, which has been rendered really beautifully by the artist. And Rory, the barman, will say, that's a portrait of the pirate queen of Barbuda. You know the stories? She was a scourge in the Atlantic, and in other seas, and was eventually brought in by our Royal Navy. But rather than being hung, she was spared because our young princess, soon to be Queen Victoria, was fascinated by her stories, her daring do, a legendary figure. That's it.
All right.
And that's your mastermind clue, though. A painting of the pirate queen of Barbuda.
Cool. Well, I'll buy this old lady a drink for the road and
Yeah.
take off.
Great. And let me check in with Mr. Nelson real quick. So, Mr. Nelson, you can go find Mr. Chesterfield. This is the headmaster at the Limehouse School. He is very fidgety, wearing a brown three-piece suit, and he's sort of like looking at children, kind of ropes, just kind of like looking at them with like a look of very intense disgust. And he says, I was told you wanted to speak to me. You're some sort of private investigator.
Yeah, yes. My name is Hank Nelson, and I've come here to bring you the very sad news that your teacher here, Ms. Bell, she's met with an accident, unfortunately. She will not be coming back to here.
Oh, what a terrible thing to hear. Is it sort of a physical accident? Is she dead?
Yeah, she to put it frank to you, yes, sir, she is, and she won't be returning. I'm investigating whether or not there was anything of note, strange or otherwise, that had been happening here at the schoolhouse prior to her most unfortunate demise.
Roll the information move with. Roll it with presence. I think because of your encounter with Taggart, I'm going to invoke Shaken here and make you roll a disadvantage.
Okay. See, good luck. Ooh, that's not bad luck. That's 2 6s and a 4, so that's a 6 and a 4. That's a 10. Plus
not
my
bad.
presence of 2, so that's 12.
Oh wow. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Let me take a look at the clues real quick. He says, well, I can't, I mean, look, I barely knew Charla Bell. She did some work with the children here from time to time, teaching them how to mend and wash, that sort of thing, but I never sat down and talked to the woman, and I certainly don't believe, well, I I may have forgot to mention that I'd heard rumors about Miss Bell already, that she was not just found dead, but that she was found with all her blood removed from her body. I I don't believe such things, of course, but I guess you are confirming that she is in fact dead.
I think he's gonna set his hand on the headmaster's shoulder and like really like a very strong grip and sort of lean down to him and say, "The rumors are true, all of them."
Oh, how perfectly dreadful. Well, I don't know how much help I can be. Only to say that, well, on the night when we last saw Miss Bell, we had quite a wild infestation here at the school. Bats, hundreds and hundreds of bats flew into the school. It was really quite chaotic. We didn't know what to do. We lost track of the children. People were screaming and carrying on. And for, well, several days after, we had to keep fishing bats out of children's personal belongings. They were trying to keep them as pets. That's the only thing I remember. And then we never saw Charla after that.
So I'm assuming that bats attending your schoolhouse is not a normal occurrence.
It is not a regular feature of our curriculum, no.
Well, thank you for telling me about this. He grips just a little bit harder. I'm afraid our worst fears may be reality.
Oh my. And we'll just cut there. But oh yeah, Mastermind Clue too. That was your clue though. Great swarm of bats at the Limehouse school the night Miss Bell went missing. And Mr. Green, did you have anything else you wanted to do, or were you good to go?
Giving back the bottle to Mr. Nelson when he
let's
comes
have
home.
that scene. Yeah, let's just have that scene now. So, Mr. Nelson, you've arrived.
I think Mr. Nelson steps in, and I think Green is kind of almost waiting, maybe in the kitchen, hears him come in, and they walk out there, and they have the bottle kind of in a really nice silk bag that we saw them bring back from the tailors before they made themselves. And they're like, Mr. Nelson, I made this. I had it refilled with the finest brandy I could find in this city.
A little note about the bottle when you pull it out of the bag. It has tied around the neck a sapphire blue ribbon that you don't remember tying onto it.
I hope you like it.
Yeah, when Hank comes in and sees Green, he of course tips his hat and sort of like stunned takes I hadn't even realized it was gone. Well, thank you for refilling it for me. It was a rather special vintage. I'm sure you've replaced it as such. I trust you, Green. I trust your taste in whiskey.
Well, it is dear to your heart. That's what I felt with this bottle. So now I hope you will be able to share it again with some in the right moment.
Well, when that time comes, I hope you're there with me, and you'll share a glass.
Oh no, not me, but thank you.
So I guess it goes back to your personal quarters unmarked as a bottle of brandy, right? So you could even note the sapphire blue ribbon if you want.
Adding it back.
And with that, we'll go to the dusk phase. All right. Let's do playbook moves. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I think, Mr. Quinn, you can definitely invoke Unquenchable Thirst at this point if you wish, because a sliced open hand is not a beautiful hand. Let's read the move. It says, your physical beauty is not only unparalleled, it is aggressively eternal. During the dusk phase, clear all conditions related to your physical appearance. When you do so, scar your reflection. And yeah, and also whenever you perform an action that leverages your physical appearance, you get advantage on those rolls. Scar your reflection. And how does the statue change as your hand heals?
I think that the statue in this case will start to bear the physical markers of these. And so now a crack appears in the palm of that hand on the statue.
I love it. Let's keep going with other moves. Any Ghost of Hargrave House, Green?
I think Green might borrow the coin from the stash of Mr. Teleport.
Oh yeah, that was supposed to. I thought that was given to Mr. Bell, but maybe you swiped it back, Mr. Teleport.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I wasn't planning on it. I assumed Green was somehow swiping it back.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty good. Maybe Green gets their hands on the coin. I think that'd be good. We don't even have to know how you did. You just did. But you can add that to your personal quarters.
Somehow.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's do the quickening. Take it away, Mr. Nelson.
Well, so far I am continuing to evade the worst of it. That's an 8.
Do you want to go ahead and bump it since you've already got 3 conditions?
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah. Mark your Janus mask and you will be at a 10. You have all the physical prowess that you need for the night. And let's keep going. Let's talk about Hargrave House. The music room. So we've done the trophy room and we've done the conservatory, right? Let's do the music room. A former hunter in residence once used the music room to wrangle a spirit using the power of music. There are still subtle signs of this struggle in the room. What are they?
So there's a piano and certain notes just don't play because the strings have popped.
Nice.
I think that at a certain time each day, when you go in that room, there is this faint sound of music with no identifiable source.
I think
so.
Go ahead, Adrian.
I think there's about 15 different books with the score for a particular piece in kind of small variations that was used during this struggle. So all of these different variations were played, and this just somewhere in the corner has been sitting there for a long time.
I think there are some large, like sort of grand stained glass windows in this room that they have a ripple in the glass that if you look close enough, it almost looks like, water. If you're playing music next to it, you'll see the sound waves. So I think that they almost as if the glass was water to them at some point.
Nice. All right, let's go around the table. Everyone, what is everyone interested in doing tonight? Let's go in reverse order. Mr. Telford.
Oh, I'm going to watch a failed exorcism.
Ah, very good. Mr. Quinn.
I'm hosting a dinner party.
Green.
Attending to Mr. Quinn's needs during the dinner party.
And Mr. Nelson.
I will plan to make an appearance at a dinner party.
Very good. I love it. Sounds good. If there's no other changes, then we'll keep going. And do we have any unresolved Janus masks right now that we need to be aware of?
I still have a desk move, but no masks.
Okay.
And
I took,
the mask that I took was the Gilded Door, so everyone has to mark and remove that, I believe. And I took that, so now we can access our ghost move. So
you took the Gilded Door to access the ghost move?
Is that the one that's required?
No, it's the Cosmic Passage.
Okay, well then never mind. I'm taking the Cosmic Passage.
Okay.
No one. All right.
So you have to increase your sensitivity by 1 and reduce your reason by 2. But you now have the Cosmic Passage, and that is great. Let's go to...
So I took an additional move with an advance at the end of last session, and that was the day work move.
Oh, very good. Let's read that. Day work. You spend most days caring for Hargrave House, tidying up, managing accounts, answering callers. Each desk phase, you get to choose one. Which one did you choose?
I think what I will do. So green is kind of picking up stuff from around the house, glasses and so on, to bring them back to the kitchen, and goes through all of the rooms, and also goes to Julius's quarters, but I might still have this beautiful glass that Mr. Quinn's blood was poured into, and kind of shaking their head when they see it. They bring it back to the kitchen.
So this is you find something of use in the house?
I think maybe I find something out about in this context about Julius, maybe.
Oh, okay.
When I'm in the room.
Yeah, I like that. Julius is not an active threat, but he's somewhat connected to the Limehouse Lurker, so you can ask me any question you like.
Or maybe something about vampires, let's say.
Yeah, I like that.
Something about vampires that maybe something about the kind of their feeding habits or schedule or something that might help us later.
Yeah, I like that. I will give you a decide if I want to give you I'll give you a clue. Julius has been having, as you go in to collect the glass, you discover that Julius has been having huge amounts of roses delivered to the house. You take these deliveries from time to time, and the room is like just an ever expanding, bountiful mass of roses in the room. It hits you, the smell hits you. This could just be a particular proclivity of Julius's, or it could have something else to do with the nature of vampires. But in any case, it's sort of a sideways clue. There may be something to know about the Limehouse Lurker in that way. You could write it down on the threat sheet however you wish as a clue, but that's the deal with that. Great. And with that, let me introduce the unseen for tonight.
So before we do that, should we answer a question? Because I feel like we have a ton of clues for this vampire.
You can, yeah, if you want to. You can answer a question about that. You can answer a question about the St. James's Street ghost, since you're heading over there. Maybe you can resolve it. Or you can just go watch a disastrous exorcism.
Yeah, I thought I might just pick up clues there tonight.
Oh, that's good. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, we could do it. I mean, now's the time if we want to do it. Go for it.
So, all right, I'm throwing out here that the vampire is young. And so I think some of the supporting clues, I think the child being offended and offered milk sweets, like you would maybe think that he was offended because he was old, but I think an old vampire would know better to like control their reactions. So I think just the fact that he outwardly showed offense shows that he's young. The swarm of bats at the school. So if that's related to like when he was turned, that could certainly be it. It would explain why he went for Miss Bell, who was known to be cruel for children. And I'll turn it over to the floor if anybody else has ideas for other things.
I also think potentially that the Bible desecration could play into it. Like a new vampire might be like doing like really obvious things.
Oh, he's super edgy.
Yeah.
He's like first getting into vampirism.
I mean, if he's, I mean, presumably, I guess he could be a new vampire who's like, what are we thinking is like his state of mind, I guess? Like, is he still a child, or is he just like kind of slightly older than a child, but still fairly young?
I would say still a child. I would say like just turned into a vampire when the bat showed up, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you're thinking that just essentially, so I mean, it's not a capital C clue, but him killing Miss Bell because she's cruel to children would probably explain that. The swarm of bats at the Limehouse school the night Miss Bell went missing, you're saying that the bats like foretold his arrival or foretold his change? Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, something like that.
I have maybe a good way of handling that, which could be like, now that they've been like, they were like turned that night or what have you, and they now have this ability to communicate with bats that they didn't know about before, and so they like accidentally used it and just talked to a bunch of bats and told them to come here, and so that's why all the bats showed up.
So the bats were, so we're saying that the bats and the candy are just evidence of like a vampire that doesn't have control over his actions, right? And emotions. That's an interesting approach. I think that's super interesting. Let's mark them for now. And that's
I have another one.
Yeah.
So maybe the third thing goes missing. It basically points us to that this might be a child doing like a counting out game, you know, like a kind of like a rhyme that they learned as a child, like, you know, 1, 2, 3, whatever. So
Oh, I like that. So they're kind of like doing a children's counting game.
yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. That's interesting. So we've got Miss Bell.
Like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or something like this.
We actually do have a clue about Miss Bell being cruel to children, never mind. And then we have the threes go missing. So that's 4 clues. That's a flat roll. If anybody wants to get a little boost on that, you could work in another clue.
Well, did we want to put the Bible in there? Of the edgy
Maybe.
Bible desecration?
Maybe it's not edgy Bible desecration. Maybe it's more of that impulse control. I have this, maybe I feel like Miss Bell was like the first person that this kid killed, right? And then like maybe they had to read Bible stories at the workhouse or whatever. And so like afterwards, just in this like fit of rage and confusion, just like started ripping out that story.
Oh, I see. That's pretty good. That's good extra context. Maybe that's what Ms. Bell did. She tried to make them into good Christians, right? Interesting. So you're at a +1 if we go with this theory. If there's nothing else, you guys can roll.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with this. I feel like we should try to save some clues for the next part. So
Go for it. +1.
all right. Man, I'm on a roll. That's a 13 again.
Wow. All right, let's read the move. Answer a question. Oh. On a 12+, the mastermind will reveal themselves while you're pursuing the opportunity. So basically, Theodora is real deep in this one, essentially is what it boils down to, because the opportunity is basically just opening up the next question. And so Theodora is going to be here at the Limehouse Lurker a lot, basically. It's going to get her attention. But you are correct. It is a young vampire. And the question that it unlocks is the following. If the vampire is young, what was the child's home life like before they returned? It allows you to resolve the threat by luring the vampire into a scene reminiscent of its home life and then destroying it, or making arrangements for it to safely feed on a regular basis. Note that.
If we don't get Julius to play the part of vampire dad, we've failed as a group.
Just finish typing this real quick. I mean, what are the chances that Julius turned the creature, right? We don't know. Julius could just totally be lying about how much he knows about the vampire. Very interesting. Okay, question answered. Cool. Let's go to the unseen then. Tonight's unseen is going to be... Oh, let's do dinner parties. We'll be bouncing between dinner parties tonight. This one's called the dinner party. It's in the 3rd row, first entry in the 3rd row. Eric Taylor has a good job as a clerk, and with his wife Abigail, they form the very picture of the respectable new Victorian middle class. Behind the lace curtains of their terrace home, they are throwing a small dinner party for equally respectable friends, the Davenports. The Taylor's daughter, Maud, plays piano passively in the parlor before dinner is served. The first is to paint the scene. Everyone does that. And the second prompt will be Dan, then Alicia, and then David. Let's take 5. It's the night phase. There's a dinner party going on tonight, apart from the one at Hargrave House. Probably a lot of dinner parties. But in this particular one, as the Taylors and the Davenports enter the dining room, what do we see that shows the Taylors have made their best efforts to impress? And how do we know the Davenports are a rung above them in terms of wealth and prestige?
So the Taylors have brought out like bottles of Bordeaux, of like very nice Bordeaux. And when the Davenports show up, they also bring Bordeaux that is like a couple years older than the wine that the Taylors have put out.
I think the Taylors have spent the money to attain a pineapple that is a set piece on their table, a somewhat rare thing in those times. And I think the Davenports see it and are not impressed.
I think that the china that the tailors are using, they picked up in an antique shop, and it actually previously belonged to the Davenports.
You're muted, Adrian.
I think when they have like they walk over to the, or they sit down, and they the first bottle of wine is picked up by Mr. Taylor and shown to Mr. Davenport, and Mr. Davenport takes it, has a look at it, and then he takes out this bottle opener, gold with inlays of mother of pearl and so on, and opens it and gives it back to Mr. Taylor.
Very good, very good. So, Green, give us the preparations for the night. What does this look like? What's going on?
I think Green spends a lot of time looking at the do I remember this correctly? I think is that Mr. Quinn? No, I think it's not Mr. Quinn that has a collection of handkerchiefs. No, that was Mr. Talaford. So I think but still, I think I think Green is kind of, in an occasion like this, they are preparing, of course, they put out the clothes for Mr. Quinn and all of that, and placed a handkerchief for the suit fitting on top of it. And I think then they go over to the other rooms of the other hunters and also kind of pick out a handkerchief for them that fits with the suit that they chose themselves, and kind of leaves it at their door in a kind of little bag or something.
Mr. Quinn, what about the actual dinner party itself? Like, what sorts of refreshments, what sorts of party favors are happening here?
So
no one has arrived yet. No one's arrived yet. It's just
yeah. That's the finest of wines and a collection. I think that this is an opportunity for Mr. Quinn to show off just a large number of things that he has. He likes to get his hands on things, and so it's an opportunity to show that off. And so to that end, on everyone's plate is a rare individualized gift that he has pulled from his collection of accoutrements.
I love it. So our guests tonight are a Mr. and Mrs. Stewart. Mr. Stewart is a rare coins dealer, and Mrs. Stewart is his wife. Theodore Brathwaite is one of the guests as well. And of course, Mr. Taggart and Mr. Quinn, and theoretically Mr. Nelson will be in attendance as well. Mr. Nelson's nowhere to be found at the moment, though. We'll get back to Mr. Nelson in a bit. But yeah, so I think like we hear the ding, 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 ding at the front of the door, or at the door. And Green, assuming you go answer it, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart are there. They step inside, and they're very like, ooh, ah, as they look around the entry hall of Hargrave House, which of course, I'll remind you, Hargrave House is this sort of like Gothic monstrosity compared to like everything else in Belgrave Square. And so they're just kind of like, doing this and that. And Mrs. Stewart says, my goodness, it's like, I should fear that the Hunchback of Notre Dame might come galloping down from the rafters at any moment.
At that moment, I would like to descend the stairs in my outfit. It's a new outfit.
And What do you look like? What are you wearing?
Did anyone see the recent photos of Lizzo's fishnet outfit?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
It's that, basically.
So essentially naked.
Yes,
Yeah.
essentially naked. The most important bits are covered. There is like a sort of crop top thing. Mr. Quinn binds and so like wants to sort of cover the bandages that are done that. So like just a little crop top and like full fishnets. And then in his sort of lower region, there is a bejeweled patch of some kind.
I think Mrs. Stewart will say, "Oh, that's quite a bit different from the Hunchback, don't you think?" And Mr. Stewart says, "There, Delia, just keep it down. This is our host for this marvelous evening. Mr. Quinn, I'm Mr. Stewart. Thank you so much for inviting us to dinner. Although I can't imagine someone like you would need rare coins. Are you a collector?"
Oh, I think it's fair to say I'm a collector of many things. Would you like a tour of the house?
And we'll cut the scene there. Mr. Taliford, you're in a handsome cab with Julius, actually. Two of you are heading over to 18 St. James's Street. He says, "Well, thank you for letting me tag along."
Oh, the more the merrier. I expect this is going to be quite the scene.
Yes, I've read something about it in the paper. Apparently, these Beals, they're going to exorcise a spirit from their home. What a spectacle.
Well, they're certainly going to try.
So I gather that this address, 18 St. James's Street, is of interest to Hargrave House then?
Yeah, there's been some, we've been investigating the haunting, as it were, and we're making some headway, but I feel like tonight's really going to kind of crack the case open.
Indeed. Well, speaking of cracking things open, and he has like a bottle of champagne, and he says, "A little bit for the road, eh?" And he's sort of like, uses his physical strength to crack open the head of the champagne bottle, and like he has a couple of like thick-walled glasses, and he's pouring champagne. And he says, "Driver, do you want one?" And he kind of is pouring for the driver, and champagne sloshing all over the fucking place because you're in a carriage. And he hands you a glass and says, "Well, let's have a toast then. What shall we toast to?"
Well, to the revealing of mysteries.
Very good. I shall toast to my new companions and roommates really, really loving my company and not putting me out.
All right.
And he
Tink.
tink. And the cab drops you off at the address. There are already quite a few people gathered in the garden. And you see a boy at the front gate, sort of like taking payment from people as they come in, and he's very like, he's like 10 years old, and he's like, he's kind of foul-mouthed actually. He's dropping lots of bloodies and other things as he's sort of like yelling at people, directing them into the house, right? He's like, don't worry, keep your socks on. There's plenty of ghostly activity for everyone to see. Come on. All right, then. Yeah, thank you. He's grabbing coinage, It's like, all right, get out of here. Go, And the two of you are there. He says, "Oh, so you come to see the exorcism, huh?"
Yep.
It's like, well, and then he tells you an appropriate amount of money to pay, and and Julius, pays his bit. You can pay your bit. You can go in. What are you doing as you sort of like are kind of joining this like crowd of people pouring into the house?
So now that I'm there, I think it's the appropriate time to do the thinning of the veil, find a quiet place and throw some rune stones and see what's going to happen.
I love it. Let's read the move. It says, when you consult your divination tools to glimpse the future, roll a sensitivity.
That is a 6.
A 6. Let's read the move here. On a miss, so you glimpse a terrible fate awaiting one of your fellow hunters. You get to hold one. You can note that wherever you wish. Just before any fellow hunter rolls for a move, you may spend the hold to say, the runes have shown me this is how you're going to die. They then choose to back down or go through with it. If they go through with it, they mark a box on their XP track, but the miss result is replaced with your character is immediately retired from the game. The vessel will describe it. So you glimpse a fate of one of your fellow hunters. We don't need to know who yet, but nothing about the ghost.
All right, well, still a productive use of my time.
Indeed.
Can that result be countered by marking a mask?
It absolutely can
The
be,
miss?
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
the miss from
The miss at the end that retires the
yeah,
character?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do I have to be physically present
No,
to say that? Okay.
no, it's out of character thing. As you're casting the rune stones in a little corner of the garden, Julius is leaning over your shoulder and he says, ooh, what do they say?
And I think that's what fucks me up. Like, I'm like just about to zoom into my vision and he like snaps me out of it and I just see glimpses of death.
I love it. Good. All right. Let's go back to our dinner party at the Taylor's home. Dan, Mrs. Taylor and Mrs. Davenport hate one another. How do they subtly lash out over the course of dinner without drawing attention or causing a scene?
So as they're sitting across from each other at the table, they're like physically just kind of stomping on each other's toes occasionally.
Nice. Theodora arrives, and I think at this point we're going to fast forward a little bit and just have everyone, the Stewarts, Theodora, and Green, and Mr. Quinn in the library having a drink before dinner. And everyone's kind of milling around and, you're chatting and whatever, And Mr. Stewart asks Theodora loudly, says, Ms. Brathwaite, perhaps you would like to entertain us with stories about your rather legendary former career. And Theodora says, well, I'm quite sure our host doesn't want to hear those stories. Do you, Mr. Quinn?
Well, this house hears so many of my stories. I think it's time we heard some fresh ones.
Well, all right. So, in my younger days, when I was 16 years old, I was the captain of a ship, and I had several other ships loyal to me. And let's just say that we were notorious for extracting a toll from merchant vessels and other people on the high seas. They called me the Pirate Queen of Barbuda. Well, of course, the crown didn't like that one bit. And they eventually sent a detachment from the Royal Navy to come stop me. Yeah. They did, sadly, stop me, but I put up a fight. I didn't swing because, well, let's just say in that day, I was a bit of a celebrity, and there was a bit of an outcry. People were enchanted by my legend, as it were. But of course, I eventually turned my ships into something more commercial and legal. And I discovered then that, well, the real criminals of this world are the ones that manipulate and move around capital. That's the way to make money in this world, let me tell you. Green, what are you doing right now?
Is she wearing this sapphire necklace?
Always, yeah.
Always.
It's a choker. Yeah.
So I think Green is standing at the entrance of the dining room, kind of looking around, being attentive to if anyone needs drinks refilled or something, and just kind of fixating on that necklace. And yeah, kind of looking at that and then realizing, of course, that that is the woman there.
Yeah. She'll notice you looking and she'll say, Green, you seem like you have a question you want to ask.
Oh, excuse me, Miss Theodora. I'm just glad that you finally decided to accept the invitation and accept and grace us with your presence here at our house. Is there anything else you need?
Well, I found the tour to be most stimulating. I'm very, very curious what you all do here at Hargrave House, Mr. Quinn. What is the nature of, well, what happens here? It seems like there's more than just day-to-day living going on.
Oh, certainly. I run my business from here.
Is that the sort of business that one can talk about in polite company, Mr. Quinn?
I suppose it depends on who you're talking to.
Well, I don't want to scandalize poor Miss Stewart, she says, like quietly, or Mrs. Stewart. But I'm famished. When is dinner going to be served?
I believe we're just waiting on 2 more guests.
Speaking of those 2 guests, Mr. Nelson, you were coming back to Hargrave House, getting, you had gone out for, we'll just say you'd gone out for a cigarette or something, and you were getting ready to go back in when you see Mr. Taggart down the lane near the house, but not quite on Belgrave Square, or not quite there at the square. But you see him down the lane and he's like engaged in some kind of like really intense conversation. You can hear the intensity of the conversation. You can smell a bit of nervousness because of your heightened senses right now. You're too far away to figure out exactly what they're talking about, what's going on. But Mr. Taggart is turning away from Hargrave House. He's not going to the dinner party. Something has his attention. He is attending to something quite unexpectedly. Because you might be able to keep up with him because of your heightened state right now, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I would love to tail him.
Give me the night move with vitality. What are you afraid is going to happen if you lose him?
If I lose him?
Or like if you fail the die roll.
Okay. Because like if I fail, like I think I'm most worried about being discovered.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Because like
yeah.
I he's he's shorter than I am. He has shorter legs. I have heightened senses, heightened sensations right now. I feel like I can probably follow him, but can I do that without him noticing?
Okay, yeah.
Hopefully, that's my goal.
It's worse than that. You're going to discover, unfortunately, that he just has to bring you in alive. As long as you're alive, the condition of your aliveness is not as important, and he may get violent with you. So let's have that roll there.
All right. Okay. What am I rolling again? This vitality?
It's going to be an advantage because it's vitality, and yeah.
I need that advantage, so add that extra dice. It's useless. Thanks for that +1. That's a 7. I rolled 3 3s.
You will catch up, so that's good. Give us the scene. How are you how is your beast nature helping you close the gap here?
Yeah. I think when I'm drawing on that power in a state that I'm in tonight, where I'm feeling pretty good with this and I'm feeling very in control, I think Hank seems to grow a couple inches taller, and my steps are longer, my coordination is better, and as I for every 2 of his steps I take 1, and I watch his position out of the corner of my eye, and you can actually see that Hank's left eye tracking him and then tracking who he had just been talking with. You see it split, and there's a second pupil that's watching, and so I'm keeping tabs and also moving very quickly to tail.
We'll come back to that. Mr. Taliford, everyone is gathered in 18 St. James's Street. They've gussied up Irma Thicket. She's wearing a clean black dress, and she's been persuaded to serve refreshments to the guests, although she certainly looks very, very sullen about it. Mrs. Beale is actually not around. You gather she's in the attic tending to the baby. But Mr. Beale and his son Roger are sort of holding forth, and there's just a little bit of milling around before while the priest makes an assessment of the area. So what are you doing in the meantime?
So I'm going to follow Mrs. Beale into the kitchen when she goes for a new round of refreshments and just have a chat with her and offer to help her out.
Well, so Mrs. Beale is tending to the baby. Irma Thicket is the one.
Irma Thicket, sorry, yeah.
Okay. So
because we've already met, right? Oh no, I actually never met her. I never went inside.
Yeah.
Oh well. Same deal.
You can follow her downstairs to the basement area where the kitchen is, if you wish.
Yeah.
And she's just complaining the whole time. Ugh, this is not my job. Ugh, waiting on looky-loos and goo-gawkers.
So I'll help her out and grab a bottle of wine and crack open the wine with a very plain bottle opener that's there.
Yeah. Julius is there too. He's followed you down, and he sort of leans over your shoulder and he says, do you smell that smell? That smell of onion and tobacco wafting off of her body. Wouldn't you like to get a taste of that?
Julius, this is not the time or place.
And he just says, he shrugs and goes back upstairs. So what do you say?
So what do you think about all of this?
I think it's ridiculous. This house is a cursed place, no doubt. But for Mr. Beale to have all these people here airing our dirty laundry and, well, doing the exorcism, I just think it's monstrous.
Well, I think it's foolish too. And I think it's going to go poorly.
Yes, well, you and me both. Can I help you? Why are you down here?
Oh, well, I just like to talk to, the people who really know what's going on in a place. All of these people upstairs, they don't know. They're just here to gawk. But, I think you may have met some of my friends from Hargrave House. And, we'd like to actually solve the problem.
So, all right. Well, how can I help?
Oh, well, I just need a place to, maybe hang out and watch what's going on, maybe without being, I don't want to be in the center of attention or anything. I might need a few supplies here or there, a bottle of wine, some salt.
She says, All right, all right. I'm happy to do that. And she says, I mean, help yourself to everything that's in the larder or the pantry.
All right, great. So yeah, I'm just gonna take a bottle of wine out, take some salt, various things that I might need if things go sideways.
Okay, good. And she goes back upstairs. So what are you going to do after that?
So I think that my only other thing I'd like to do before this thing starts is like, I want to go find a reporter and just plant the seeds of like, I know this is a bad idea and everything's going to go poorly. So
Okay, good. Let's go back to our dinner party at the Taylor's house. Alicia, Maud, and the Davenport's son, Alexander, both chafe under the expectations of their parents. As the meal draws to a close, how do we see this expressed in their conversation or petty acts of rebellion?
I think that all throughout the meal, they have been purposely using the incorrect cutlery and then like putting it down in the wrong spots so that at the end of the meal, like everything's just a jumble, even though they know.
Good. So Green and Mr. Quinn, we're fast forwarding. We've decided not to wait for Mr. Nelson and Mr. Taggart, and everyone is sitting around the dining table at this point. And, there's, just a little chit chat going on. And
I think Green has an idea of like how to pass the time.
okay, sure.
So I think kind of waiting, and Green is getting a bit restless about when are we actually going to start the dinner. And so they say, oh, Mr. Stewart, I have this this thing here. Maybe it might be of interest to you. And he takes out this like a little satchel, beautifully made, and out of it he takes a polished silver coin and says, there are so many old things around this house, and I happened upon this during the day, and I was thinking about you. Maybe there's something you can tell us about it. I think they say it is one of the silver pieces given to Judas Iscariot, but I'm sure that's not true. So maybe there's something. Maybe you can enlighten us about it. There's some interesting information or anecdote or anything about where this was made.
What's your goal here?
I think to get some, like an information move, probably like to get some information about
on which threat?
On the
because I don't think it really necessarily applied to the Pinkerton here.
No, let's see. Maybe I can. Let me see.
I give you a free floating clue too, a clue that applies to a future threat also. So
yeah, maybe let's see, maybe I think they no, I think maybe they say something like who where would I best sell something like this if I wanted to get the most money for it?
Oh, that's good. Okay, go ahead and do the information move. And since you're using the coin, you can mark it to get advantage if you wish.
Well, so let's see. I'm rolling with, well, I rolled 3 threes, so no. But let's see, probably with reason, I guess.
Yeah, I think that would probably be with, probably with
with
sensitivity.
Presence, maybe?
I think sensitivity.
Sensitivity.
The
okay,
coin,
so
yeah.
Then it's a 6.
Ah, very good. You pull out this coin, and this is quite a thing to pull out at the party, right? Talking about upstaging your little place setting gifts, Mr. Quinn. A piece of silver that was used to pay Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus Christ himself is really something. And everybody just goes quiet. And Mr. Stewart stands up from his place at the table and he says, "Let me see that, Green." And he holds out his hand. And he takes it. And he says, "My word, I've heard stories about the 30 pieces of silver. Is it possible that you actually have in your possession one of them?" And he's holding it up to the candlelight, admiring it. And Theodora looks across the table to you, Mr. Quinn, and says, "Well, this is turning into a rather interesting party after all." And Mr. Stewart, he just, he says, I couldn't really say, Green, where you would be able to sell such a thing, or who would even be able to afford it. As you might imagine, people who would be interested in collecting such things are perhaps not too easy to get in contact with, or and Mrs. Stewart says, "Dear, are you all right?" And he just sort of like, he says, I have to go.
I think Green would kind of stumble forward and try to take it out of his hand.
He pulls back. He says, no. You have to let me take this. You have to let me get this examined by an expert. And he pushes away from the table and he's leaving. What do you do?
So I think Green kind of tries to follow and stumps his toe on the table and stands there and looks to Mr. Quinn and I'm sorry, I did not mean to. It was just meant as some form of. I think Green is kind of over.
Mrs. Stewart is chasing after Mr. Stewart. Like, why are we? Where are we going? Dinner hasn't even been served yet, and they're like kind of going out to the main foyer.
I'm going to stand up in all of my nearly naked glory, and I am pissed for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that I threw this fucking party for Mr. Nelson, who hasn't even bothered to show up. And I'm just going to get up and I'm going to yell, "This is unacceptable."
And Mrs. Stewart says, "You see, dear, you're being very rude. Come back, come on." And she's trying to like pull Mr. Stewart back into the dining room. And Mr. Stewart says, "Woman, unhand me." And you can't see any of this. You just hear him crying out. And then you hear it. And Mrs. Stewart stumbles into the dining room. She has a knife sticking in her neck and blood going all over the fucking place. And she's just like, and she just collapses down, boom, face first on the floor. And Theodora looks up and says, "Well, this is the social event of the season, isn't it?" Let us cut back to Mr. Nelson, our absent party goer. You got a 7, right, on your
I did
your night move. So you were able to get close to Mr. Taggart, no problem. Not really sure. Let me read the move to make sure I'm. 7-9, you do it or hold steady, but there will be a complication or cost. I'll describe what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to describe the cost. The cost is 2 things. It's kind of a hard choice. whoever Mr. Taggart was talking to goes off in one direction, and he goes off in another direction. You have to make a choice about who to follow.
I think I'm going to follow who he was talking to.
Then what?
I think I'm going to confront them. I'm going to pursue them. And like, basically once I have them separated from Taggart, who I'm actually worried about, I'm just going to like follow them. If they duck down an alley or something on a way to wherever they're going, I'm just going to like grab them and like throw them up against the wall.
It's a young man, kind of probably, he's dressed in a sort of a clean but unremarkable, suit. Yeah, you can do that. He's like, excuse me, I don't have any money. I can't. I don't.
Oh, you have something far more valuable than money, young man.
This is what?
You know why you were talking to Mr. Taggart just now.
He's like, oh, I gotta go. I can't help you. And he's trying to push you off, but he can't. You're too strong.
I'm gonna pull out my golden railroad spike, and I'm gonna like hold the tip of it next to his neck, and I'm gonna say, I think that with the proper persuasion, you can tell me what I need to know.
Roll the information move with probably presence.
So I think this is what the runes have shown me, how you're going to die.
Oh, so you have a choice, Mr. Nelson. If you go forward with your action, you mark XP, but the miscondition becomes you're dead. So
okay, I'll take it.
Go for it.
Oh, that's not a miss. That's a 5 and a 3 is 8 plus 2 presence is 10.
Very good. And don't forget to mark your XP.
I will.
He says, okay. What do you want to know?
I want to know exactly what you were speaking with Mr. Taggart just now about and what your relationship is with him.
And he'll tell you the answer when we get back. Mr. Taliford, at a certain point, everyone is gathered, announcement is made, and the priest is addressing everyone in the main hall, the entry hall, where the party's kind of happening, although it's spilling out to the side rooms, of course. He says, I have determined that this entity that is currently has its terrible spectral grip on this house and this family. I have determined where it is in the house, and I will use the power of the good book, the word of our Lord, to cast it out from this place and to give this poor family the respite they so desperately deserve. Now, if you will all please follow me upstairs. And the crowd of people, it's probably like 30 or 40 people like going up the stairs. What are you doing, Mr. Taliford?
So I think I found a reporter, and I'm talking to the reporter and giving him my comments as we're going up. And I'm like, so, he's right about where it is, but like, trust me, I know this guy. He's the worst. This is never gonna work.
Where did we determine, per the question, what part of the house was the ghost attached to? I don't recall.
It was the kitchen, actually. Oh yeah, so he's going the wrong place.
He's going the wrong way. Yeah, he's going.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, this is clearly he doesn't know what he's talking about. The ghost is in the kitchen. Like
the reporter's like, in the kitchen. That's not very exciting.
Well, I mean, the ghosts aren't necessarily known for their, they don't choose their location to be for maximum excitement.
Well, I'm just saying, it's a ghost that is maybe tormenting the lady of the house, or a ghost that is, maybe possessing the baby or something. That's a good story. A ghost that's hanging out downstairs in the kitchen. Who cares about that?
You know how many knives are in a kitchen, right?
Oh, that's a good point. Can I quote you? that we saw a knife floating around on its own?
Sure.
Great. What was your name, sir?
Oh, Meacham Taliford.
Oh, good. Thank you. Terrifying. Oof. And you're going upstairs, and the priest begins he goes into this room, and he's like, "Hear me, servant of the devil, hear me, you terrible unmoored spirit. I cast you out in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ." And he's kind of going on. He's rebuking the ghost, and he's doing all the stuff he's intending to do. Nothing is happening as far as you can tell, Mr. Taliford. What are you doing? Julius says, "This is quite a show."
Let me see if there's a good thing I can do here. I think I'm gonna just let him wear himself out.
Okay, very good. He goes on for a little bit, and the house actually starts to respond. Everybody who came here, they're going to get their money's worth, because a gust of wind sort of blows in from a window that flies open. Everyone's like, oh, and then something on the nightstand, a lantern, falls and smashes. Everyone's like, oh, and people are grasping each other in fright and terror. And the priest says, yes, you can hear me. You feel called out by the power of the Lord, as you should be. And now you will be cast out by that same power. And he begins reading, the Lord's Prayer or something, right? And as he's reading the prayer, the room is going a little crazy. Things are flying around, people are dodging things, and there's a lot of people screaming out in terror. Something is definitely happening, Taliford. And then when it's all done, the priest cries out and collapses to the ground, maybe at the same time that Mrs. Stewart collapses to the ground. And then he raises his head from the floor, and his eyes are filled with green light. And we'll go back to the party. Our last check-in here. David, Mr. Davenport and Mr. Taylor withdraw into Taylor's study for port and cigars. Alone, how do they expose the vices they hide from society to one another?
I think that Mr. Taylor has a copy of the day's paper there. And when Davenport joins him, Davenport, I think in the party was fairly disinterested, as the wives squabbled and the kids made a mockery of the dinner arrangements. But now he's with a keen interest. He runs over to Taylor and takes a look at the newspaper and sees they immediately turn to where there's a column about some horse races, and they review the results, and you see Davenport looks crushed and Taylor looks elated, and Davenport reaches in and pulls out his checkbook and writes a check, which he gives to Mr. Taylor there in the back room.
Very good, very good. I love it. Green, Mr. Quinn, Mrs. Stewart is dead, bleeding out. If only Julius was here.
I think because Mr. Quinn just got up and was really angry, I think Green will say, "I'm sorry, I will take care of this," and they will drag out Mrs. Stewart to kind of the entry hall and are going to deal with this.
Mr. Quinn, what are you doing? Theodora seems remarkably unmoved by all of this.
I'm going to look at her and I'm going to say, well, I think it's fair to say that this did not turn out in any way that I had planned. Green will likely be summoning the police, and frankly, I'm just going to retire to my quarters, so you should just go, I guess.
What a pity that the night should end this way. I do hope that Scotland Yard doesn't give you too much trouble about this. It's fairly obvious that Mr. Stewart is the one that did this to his poor wife. And of course, I'm happy to give any sort of statement you need to that effect.
Much appreciated. Is there somewhere we can contact you if necessary?
Oh, well, yes, in fact, I actually live day to day in Brathwaite Hall. That's the name of my country, my little country house outside of the city. Speaking of which, I'm actually throwing a party of my own at Brathwaite Hall 3 nights hence. Would you perhaps like to attend? An invitation for an invitation. It's the least I could do.
Certainly, though I must say I'm shocked that you would want any further engagement with me after this horrid affair and the poor impression I'm sure I have made.
Oh, don't worry about that at all. You, Mr. Quinn, are quite incapable of making a bad impression. In fact, I imagine I'll be thinking about you quite a bit from here on out. I'm a little sad I didn't get to meet the rest of your fellow residents at Hargrave House, but maybe soon. And she gets up and she steps over the blood. She says, oh, that horrible man. I wonder where he's gone off to. And she leaves. Green.
I think Green is, as suggested, is calling the police, Scotland Yard, and is going to tell them a story that the two of them, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart, were arguing with Miss Stewart complaining and accusing her husband of having been unfaithful. And there's probably some form of evidence for that Green will put together before Scotland Yard arrives.
Yeah.
And so basically that will be the story that they will hear, that this accusation of being unfaithful angered Mrs. Stewart in a way that they actually killed their own wife.
I think as some hard mechanical consequences of the scene, I think I'd like you to take the condition shocked, and also you have to erase the silver from your gear or from personal quarters. It is out in the wind with Mr. Stewart, apparently. Mr. Quinn, anything you're going to do to wrap up the night here? As Theodora leaves and everything is your party's in a shambles.
Like I eventually would like to have a perhaps not so friendly discussion with Mr. Nelson. But that doesn't necessarily, we can wait for him to return tonight, or it can be another phase. Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's good. Mr. Nelson, you are, so you're threatening this young man. He says, listen, fine. I was doing a bit of work for Mr. Taggart. I happen to be very, very good at creating documents that look real when they are in fact not real.
What kind of documents were you working on?
I had just delivered some. And I'd look at my clue real quick. Deeds to property around the city, buildings, warehouses, things like that.
And that's all of the work that you've done for him?
Isn't that quite enough? Are you going to turn me into the police?
Oh, And I think like at this point the like pupil that had split like slides back in to join as one, and he says, "We don't need to involve the police in this."
He says, "Oh, good. And you won't tell Mr. Taggart that I told you this?"
Well, I won't, provided you tell me one more thing.
Yes.
Mr. Taggart's from out of town. How did he come by your services?
Oh, well, Mr. Taggart, I think he's much more connected to the sort of more unsavory criminal element in the city than you might imagine, sir.
Anyone in particular I should be aware of?
Says, oh, I don't know names. I just do what people pay me to do. I don't ask questions.
I think he like, grinds the tip in just a little bit, and he's like, "Are you sure you don't know?"
Yes,
Any
very
name?
sure. Very sure.
What's your own name?
He sniffles. He says, Bradley.
And Hank takes the railroad spike and tucks it back in his little leg holster he has for it. Well, Bradley, you didn't meet me tonight. I didn't see you.
It's like, all right. And you can let it, if you let him go, he'll go. And
Yeah, I think he lets him go.
He'll say, just be careful out here. I'm sure I'm being watched.
Well, as the fates would have it, I regularly am myself. So whether they're here for you or me, who knows?
Mr. Taliford, this priest stands up, his eyes glowing. And he says in this otherworldly voice, I have no more need for this place. I am unmoored. And he steps forward and he turns and looks at you, Mr. Taliford. He says, I would like to get to know you a little better.
All right, I think I need a quickie ritual.
Okay, what is that?
Okay, so I didn't normally on a prepared ritual, I have some idea of like the spirit or like power that I'm trying to contact. But in this case, I think I'm just throwing one out there. And I'm like, whoever wants to answer this, hook me up. So I'm like throwing the salt around me in a circle and just dumping out the wine and just opening myself up to whoever wants to answer.
Very good. I think I'm going to make you roll this at disadvantage just because of the quite hurried nature of it.
That seems fair.
Yeah.
So, oh man, 644. So that's what is it? Plus sensitivity. Man, it's still a 12.
You were killing it today. You get your effect. What effect do you want?
So I want to trap a specific person or creature.
Oh, good. So trap.
I didn't like all that big unmoored talk.
Yeah. So
I would like to remoor this spirit.
up to the house.
Yeah.
Very good. I like it. That's good. I love it. And you don't have cosmic passage marks. The 12 plus doesn't matter. So go ahead and just describe what you do. How do you like reattach the ghost to Beale Street?
Yeah. So I think like you can see sort of like, I think everyone in the room can sort of see what I normally see, right? Like this just inky black tentacle, like power around the edges of their vision. And like, I don't think I even know who answered my ritual, right? Just like tentacles just like reach out and grab this priest, and it sort of rips this spirit out of him. And it like hovers in the air for a minute and then it kind of fades out again.
Everyone is standing there in shocked silence at the end. And then you just hear, it's Julius. We'll end the night phase there. Let's go to Dawn. No threat was resolved. Let's do Dawn questions. Everyone, a question was answered, so everyone gets the first box. Mr. Nelson, any echoes in the night?
I don't think so.
Did you use violence to solve a problem? Yes.
I did do that.
Did you stick out in London society for all the wrong reasons? I don't know about.
I sort of did at the school.
Oh, at the Limehouse School. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, you did. Sounds good. Green, did you experience an echo in the night?
I stomped my foot on the way to try to catch Mr. Stewart, and that reminded us of the two women during the dinner party stepping on each other's feet.
Did you engage in a petty reprisal of someone who angered your employer?
I would say so, because Mr. Stewart now is known as someone whose wife was unfaithful.
Very good. And did you have a scene showing your secret private life in London?
Well, I was at the tailor, and I did show how I did make all the clothes for Mr. Quinn myself.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Let's go to Mr. Quinn. Did you experience an echo in the night?
I think I did by referencing the antique dishware by putting out the rare gifts from my collection.
I like that. Yeah. Did you appear in London society? Yes, you did, wearing risque fashion. Did you express a clear preference for the beautiful over the mundane?
I think I did with the blood by saying that the street person's blood wasn't good enough for me.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'll take that. Mr. Taliford, did you experience an echo in the night?
So I opened the wine for the cook with the plain bottle opener as opposed to the fancy bottle opener that the down clerks used.
That's good. I like it. Did you have a face-to-face encounter with a dark entity? Yes. Did you perform a ritual? Yes. Very good. Let's keep going. You can mark new Dawn questions if you wish. No other playbook moves to resolve. Do we have any open Janus Mask prompts right now? Doesn't look like it. And so with 5 minutes left in the session, let's do stars and wishes. So a packed session. I'll start today. I really, for star, I just really loved the details. I just loved all the little tiny details that were happening in the scenes. Like we just got such just how people were dressed, what sorts of things they were doing in the scene. It all felt very, it all had a very sensory kind of experience. I was seeing it all on screen really, really vividly, and that was enjoyable. I have other stars, but I'll stop there for now.
A star to Alicia for throwing this excellent party that I then do not attend.
Yeah, I love that the party was just a big flop that ended in a murder.
This is almost like a future star, but star for that happening because of where I'm excited that's gonna push some aspects of my character that haven't been seen yet, I think. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, so for little details, I think a star for Hank's creepy eye thing.
Yeah, I love that.
I liked how I rolled twice. Both were misses, one with advantage, and it turned into that really spun the story forward. So that was great reactions also on your part, Jason.
That's one of my wishes, is to figure out what to do with that piece of silver and what to do about Mr. Bell, because these are not threats. They're not but they might be part of the Mastermind's plan, which I think is probably where all that stuff will slot in, right? Especially the piece of silver, because Theodore is aware of it, so I'll be curious to see how that all plays out. And indeed, how I work it into the ultimate scheme.
Yeah, a wish as well to see. I feel like we've got some good Hargrave House interrelationships building now, and so to see where those develop as we engage with more mysteries, engage with more threats. I'm just excited to see more of that.
I really like the music room, all the little pieces of the paint the scene question. That was great.
Any other stars and wishes?
Another star to Dan. Just man, I love me some black scary tentacles coming out and grabbing things, and that whole scene narration was really, really good. I loved. And to Jason as well for the I am unmoored bit was. I just loved how that whole scene progressed. That was lovely.
Yeah, Mr. Taliford promptly remooring him. You're like, no.
Nope.
I
Also-
love him. Okay, yeah.
I was gonna say star to Dan for being the only person who ever like wants to answer questions and solve threats while the rest of us run around and make a total mess of everything.
The pressure's going to keep
for-
increasing because, like,
Yeah.
as you ignore things, like stuff gets like much more aggressive and problematic, right? So, yeah.
A star, of course, for Mr. Quinn's outfit for the party.
Yeah, and also so just a general star wish for Julian to keep being Julian.
Julius, but yeah.
Julius, yeah.
Yeah, Julius is really fun to play. I like him a lot. I like because he's kind of like a resident now, sort of, but he's not really helping. He's not doing anything. And he's just kind of a hedonist, which I think is great. It's fun. Any other stars or wishes? Okie doke. Well, we were right at time. So as always, thank you all so much. It was great fun, and I am excited to see the story continue next time. Stop the recording.